Welcome to the Taproom Exclusive. I'm here with John Staunton of Merchant of Vin. You are the United States Eastern Sales Manager.
Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about, first of all, how you got involved with craft beer. What was it that started your journey on in craft beer?
In 1991, I took over a tavern in downtown Cleveland called the Little Bar and Grill.
Okay.
And the Little Bar was only open from like 11 in the morning until 2, 3 in the afternoon every day, Monday through Friday. And my brother Tom and I wanted to get into bar ownership. So I was still going to Kent State. I just come home from the Army, and I was going to Kent, and I took over the bar full-time with some friends helping me out. And inside the Little Bar has this real nice English pub feel to it. I think they've changed motifs since, but, nice red brick walls. We had back in the phone booth era, we had a nice red phone booth in the corner of the place that looked like an English, phone booth. And so I put a stand-up cooler in it, and I was trying to get some fun, cool beers to put in there. So there was a distributor called Dalmatian Bay.
Okay.
And I was here in Cleveland. And I don't even know if Dalmatian is still in business actually anymore. They did a lot of wines, but they did some really cool beers. And they actually sold Merchant of Vin beers. The funny thing is, I never even heard of Merchant of Vin now that I've worked for him for 15 years. But Sam Smith was involved in it. A couple Trappist breweries, Einger Brewery from Germany and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So Shell Bock was there. And we had these really neat beers. Actually, we started selling Sierra Nevada.
Okay.
There. Shell was the local beers. And so we did quite well selling these big, heavier beers with a ton of flavor and everything like that. The eye-opening thing for me at that time was because I was really just 21 when we took over. So by the time I was 22, 23, whatever it was, even though there was color, there was flavor, and it was very interesting beers with cool things, not everybody enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
But the alcohol levels weren't exceedingly high. I'd always had this idea in my head, the darker the beer, the higher the alcohol,
right.
Never understanding that Guinness is probably one of the lowest alcohol beers out there. Now, with age and everything you learn. But we had these customers come in, and we had a great trade there at the Little Bar of waiters, waitresses, bartenders, hotel employees and stuff. And then they would send their guests over and different things. And they loved drinking these craft beers. And this is well before the craft beer explosion.
Yeah.
And so that was my entry into the world.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Especially at such a young age, too, to already just go right into it like that. That's
no doubt about it. So the fun thing about the bar was that we had all the Cleveland Indians players back then hanging out there.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, sure, they liked their vodkas and bourbons and everything else that they were drinking, but they liked some of the better beers that we had, like Shell Bock and
nice
Sam Smith Oatmeal Stout and different things like that. So seeing what they were drinking, I was trying to. Now, most people were Bud Light, Miller Lite drinkers back then, but nevertheless, we started selling a lot of craft beer.
That's all, and it opens the world up to you being able to try all these things. How is it that you end up at Great Lakes?
Well, what happened at the Little Bar then is that we started to bring in Crooked River Brewing Company beer.
Okay.
And Crooked River was a local brewery, was right across the way from the Flatiron.
Okay.
And I think it's a strip joint now or something like that, And so we started carrying their beer, their Cool Mew Porter, or their Black Forest Lager, a couple other different things. Well, the lease on the Little Bar came up. And so the owners of the building didn't offer us another opportunity for lease. And the fellows who own Johnny's Restaurant, Johnny's Downtown and Johnny's on Fulton, they bought the bar from us because they basically could get a lease on the property. So out I went. I was 20-some years old, jobless, with all this vast knowledge of cool beers and how to run a bar. So I thought about opening up a tavern. And the guys at Crooked River actually offered me a job to drive a truck for them and to be a sales guy, kind of a combo effort, like drive the truck in the morning and just go to accounts, people I knew, just whatever I could do to sell some more beer.
Yeah.
So I kind of got the bug working at Crooked River. And that was about 1995, 94, 95, somewhere in 94, 95. Yeah, so probably around 1994. So I started working for them, and I was there for about 2.5 years at Crooked River. I was having dinner with my wife now, girlfriend at the time, at Great Lakes. Got to meet Pat and Dan Conway over a couple times, having beers with them in the pub. I enjoyed that pub a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I wasn't selling their beers, I loved their beer, and I loved the atmosphere of the place, and I really liked the people that were working there. And so because I was actually couldn't get out of the bartending thing totally. I was driving a truck in the morning, selling beer in the afternoon, and I was bartending at the Fulton Avenue Cafe on 28th Street. And
Oh, wow.
so all the employees from Great Lakes would hang out. They'd come over after work and stuff, and a lot of them lived in Ohio City, so I got to meet all these folks. And they said they were hiring a salesperson. So, things at Crooked River, I didn't know what this was going to happen. I loved everybody there. But now my wife was pregnant. We were going to have our first child, and I was thinking, oh, geez, what are we going to do here? So I went up to Great Lakes, and I asked him. I said, I heard you're hiring a salesperson, and, went through a grueling interview process. Actually, after days and hours of interview, and asked them when the obstacle course was going to be introduced, and and they got a good laugh of it, and they hired me. And then for the next 10 years, I worked at Great Lakes Brewing Company, and I loved every day of it. Really did.
So I've had the fortunate pleasure of talking to some people there and having them on my show and talking about what it's like to work there now. What was it like back then? Like in that you guys got to experience the boom of craft beer from somebody who really started the craft beer boom here in Cleveland. What was the energy and everything like back then?
Well, the brewery back then was in the Freeze and Chili building, which is now the condos.
Okay.
And I think we are somewhere, I'm guessing, if I'm wrong, I apologize, somewhere around 8,000 to 9,000 barrels of beer.
Wow.
When we left here to go across the street. So we'd probably gone from 5,000 barrels to, say, it's easy math, 5,000 to 10,000 barrels in the Freeze and Chili brewery. The neat things about what was going on then was that you'd have these vast swings of interest. You'd have these people that would literally lose their minds because we didn't get them all 6 cases of October or Dortmunder. And then you have these other people, you'd walk in and try to sell them a draft handle, and they look at you like you had 3 eyes in your head because it didn't say Bud Miller or Coors on the label. So you'd have these incredible differences of opinion. This is back in the time when you go to a beer festival, and there'd be more than a dozen people walk around with clipboards.
Wow.
Writing the names and their own private tasting notes for the beers and writing down the labels and all this other kind of stuff at beer festivals. So they could go to the stores, and that's when tastings actually made sense. And you could actually shake a hand with a customer who you could turn on to be a customer for years back then.
Yeah.
And then I introduced Great Lakes beers to Jacobs Field.
Okay.
It was Jacobs Field at the time.
Still is.
Yes, in my eyes, I still call Kenny King's Chicken. So yes, it's Kenny King's. It's Jacobs Field. So forgive me, I can't remember the gentleman's name from Sports Services, and it'll come to me in a minute. And I we're the local beer. You have all this domestic. How about just one kiosk, one rolling cart for Great Lakes beers? And he says there's just no money. And I suggested to him that he charges the same amount for Budweiser as he would for our beer, but put in a 16-ounce cup.
Okay.
I said, so the price per ounce is kind of the workout, and you can make a little more money selling our beer. And I said, just give me a homestand. I mean, just kind of bug the guy enough to shut me up.
Yeah, I got Cleveland's on the label, man.
Exactly. He put it in. He called me later. He goes, I can't believe how much beer we sold.
That's awesome.
And so that's what started at Jacobs Field. So that's the exciting stuff. And then, we started hiring some distributors down in Columbus and in Pittsburgh with Fuhrer Wholesale and Imperial Beverage in Michigan. And, and then the explosion of Christmas Ale was just crazy. I'll never forget. We lived, my wife and I, and 3 of my kids. My 4th was born in Euclid, where I live now. I was coming downstairs, and she's on the telephone, on our home phone. This is days of beepers. Yeah. Okay.
The phone is attached to the wall.
We got a cord. Yeah, we're landline. And
giving people an idea of the picture.
And so she's like, I'm sure if he had the beer, he'd sell it to you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I go, who is that? She's like, it's an account, got our number somehow. So this account was so angry they couldn't get enough Christmas ale. He left a message for me, but he was one of probably 300 people leaving messages for me to get more Christmas ale. Got my home number.
That's insane.
And called my house. And I got on the phone. I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, if I had the beer, I'm not hiding it. I'd love to sell you more.
I'm not going to turn down money.
So it's those things. There's a guy named Jürgen Hofer who sadly passed away about a year ago now. Jürgen worked for Null Beverage, which was our distributor, with a fellow named Freddie Colombo and Mike Null and Bob Null and all these great characters at Null Beverage. We walked in a grocery store. At the time, it's a Tops grocery store. And the guy's like, can I get 50 cases of Christmas ale? And I said, we can get you 10.
Yeah.
We got out to the car, and Fred, who was the boss at Null Beverage, calls Jürgen. 30 seconds after he left the store. He said, "Hey, this manager at this Tops in where was the Tops? It was in Parma Heights. I'm trying to think of the address ever. But nevertheless, he said, "Hey, Jurgen and John just promised me 50 cases, so you guys got to ship." And we're like, "No, we just told you 10 cases."
Yeah.
And it's like, so this was the fun times back then.
Right.
We had a lot of laughs, sold a lot of beer, a lot of education, a lot of beer dinners, a lot of different, bringing our beers in front of people from Great Lakes to explain the history, the styles, where those styles came from, why they're good, why they're bad, why they have to be kept refrigerated 100% of the time, because we didn't do anything to protect our beer but refrigeration back then.
Yeah.
So we were driven mostly by draft beer, and so that was the exciting times. And then we went across the street to the big brewery.
Yeah, man, the growth of Great Lakes has just been incredible to watch over the years.
No doubt about it.
And to actually sit there and to be a part of it and to witness it from the inside, it had to be something special.
Well, some of my best friends in the beer industry were people I met at Great Lakes. Like Luke Purcell's the head brewer here at Collision Bend Brewery. Probably my best friend in the whole world, Rob Garrity. He is left Great Lakes. He worked in the brewery as one of the brewers. Then came to the dark side, as we like to say, as a sales rep. And then he went to Guinness. From Guinness, ended up at Sierra Nevada. He was there for many years, and now he sells information for beer sales from Armadillo Insights.
Oh, nice.
And then Chad Hubbard, who is the off-premise national chain manager for Sierra Nevada, we worked together at Great Lakes.
Oh, wow.
So just amazing amount of people, high-end beer names worked at Great Lakes. We all worked together. An incredible, formidable team.
What a better place to learn, too, from those people. I mean, you get a great education in the beer world.
It was so new, in a way you couldn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because every time you did, a lot of things was the first time it was ever done.
Right, absolutely.
So, sometimes it's better to be ignorant and lucky than to be good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, it worked out well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you decide you've been at Great Lakes for 10 years. You decide you want to maybe move on. What do you go straight to Merchant of Vin from there?
Yes. No, what happened was I actually hosted a beer dinner with who became my boss from Merchant of Vin, a fellow named Joe Lipa.
Okay.
He came into Cleveland. And the owner of the Winking Lizard, one of the owners of the Winking Lizard, John Lane, hosted a beer dinner for us. And we did this. I hated the name of it. We had New World, Old World. Okay. Which became New Beer, Old Beer. But I like New World, Old World.
Yeah. You hear old beer.
Yeah, exactly. The connotation
yeah.
of old beer. So the idea was that we were going to have Great Lakes beers, and we matched up a series of Merchant of Vin beers with the Great Lakes beers. They had a larger portfolio.
Gotcha.
Because they had 10 breweries, and we could pick out different beers.
Yeah.
So we picked out beers from northern Germany and Einger Brewery in southern Germany.
Nice.
Orval, to match Burning River and all this kind of thing. And we had a great time. We just had a hoot.
Cool.
And so the next day, Joe was like, "So, where to go? What's to do around here?" And I didn't realize he was actually interviewing for a position here in Cleveland. And I said, "So, hey, would you like to come down to the brewery to see it? Let me buy you lunch." So he came in with the president of Merchant of Vin.
Oh, wow.
And so we had lunch at the brewery. I walked him around the brewery. And then I said, "You want to see some of your accounts around the neighborhood?" So we walked around, and I just drove him around and showed him a few accounts.
Yeah.
Where they're selling beer, where our beers were, that I knew they had their beers. And we had a great conversation, great laughs and everything. And when I got done at the end of the day, they made a job offer to me.
Wow.
And it was a really nice offer that I didn't want to say no to.
Yeah.
And going to Europe once a year was a big enticement. My family is from Ireland. My mom, my dad, my sister immigrated here from Ireland. And so get to see them once a year was really a good idea. I liked the beers, liked the stories. I was sad about leaving Great Lakes. But I thought this might be a better opportunity for me and my family in the long run, and it's paid off.
Yeah.
So, I've never burned a bridge at Great Lakes. I enjoy everybody still, and we have this great, because of Facebook, we have this group of people who work at Great Lakes and have worked at Great Lakes, so
nice.
We can stay in touch and everything, which is fun. So I still like going over to the pub and having beers.
Absolutely.
And I actually stole one of their guys who left Great Lakes. I shouldn't say stole the Merchant of Vin. He left to go to work at Anheuser-Busch. I stole from Anheuser-Busch a fellow named Dave Andes.
Oh, nice.
Then came to work for me at Merchant of Vin. He backfilled my position when I became the head.
Oh, really?
The part of the half the United States when I took over that job.
That's got to be. Well, we'll get there. So how do you go from getting hired day one there from that interview to now running the eastern half of the United States for sales?
It's a great question because it's been many years. And I came in thinking I was going to have the same success I had at Great Lakes, not understanding the phenomena that Great Lakes doesn't happen everywhere.
Gotcha.
I'm thinking, well, shit, I'm the reason Great Lakes was so big. Yeah, what a moron I was. Obviously they didn't need me. Yeah, they're struggling since I left. Great Lakes is 1 in a million.
Yeah.
Okay? But I found out quickly not everything we did at Great Lakes would work for these European imported beers and stuff like that. So it took me, a couple years. Sales were going up nicely from just hard work and activity and shaking hands and relationships. But I had to learn to sell the imports a lot differently than I sell the craft beers. And, it's more of a wider net, trying to get, going from 1 inch deep, trying to get to 6 inches deep in a wider net and working hard with our distributors and trying to work with them. And education is a huge thing for my brands at Merchant Event now. I'm trying to understand what a real Trappist is versus an Abbey. Mm-hmm. Trying to understand what an authentic German this versus that. Trying to understand lambic beers and why lambic beers are so rare and weird. And it was one of the reasons I left to go to Merchant Event, because these guys are the ones who invented the styles that we sell here in the United States.
Right.
They literally are the breweries and the families that made this all happen. So I was covering Ohio and Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, parts of New York. I've covered parts of West Virginia. I've covered, this, that, and the other thing. And so between grocery store chains and working with all these different people, over time, we grew the business. And in the market I'm in now, we actually doubled the size of the business, which was really nice. So our company, the parent, the managers and the president of the company wanted to kind of split things up in a way so we could actually work the markets and we can do some things. So interviewed a few of us at the company and gave me the opportunity to cover half the United States, everything east of the Mississippi.
Wow.
So we did that for a couple of years, and then he said, you know what, I think this is too much for everybody. Why don't we split it in thirds?
Okay.
So now I'm on the eastern third, which I cover, all the East Coast, basically.
Yeah.
And then we have this, my coworker Jim, good buddy of mine, covers the center of the country, and we have another guy named John that covers the West Coast.
Nice.
And so that's kind of how it works out now. So I think I have, I don't know. I got 8 folks that work in, 20 states or something like that that we're covered right now. So it's busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you guys specifically feature these European imports, like some of the brands that you guys feature in your portfolio.
Well, we'll start with Germany. And we start with the Einger Brewery in southern Germany, which is one of the highest, most awarded breweries on the planet.
One of my favorite Oktoberfests.
I think the best.
Yeah.
And, I have my thoughts on why that is, but I don't want to taint the jury pool. I just want people to enjoy it.
We'll talk off air about it.
Exactly. Then in northern Germany, we have the first certified organic brewery in the world, the Pincus Brewery.
Okay.
Which was originally the Mueller Brewery, then it's the Pincus Mueller Brewery, and they just dropped the Mueller and went to Pincus. Great family. Friedel's the head brewer now. His wife, Barb, is one of the Muellers. Just dynamite people. In Belgium, we have 3 Trappist monasteries, Orval, Rochefort, and Westmalle. All unique, great stories, each of them. We have the Lindemans Brewery. The Lindemans Brewery is the largest lambic producer of beers in the world. I think it's over 90% of the lambic beer produced in the world.
Wow.
Comes out of the Lindemans Brewery because they brew for many other lambic blenders.
Okay.
The liquid actually will come out of Lindemans, like for Hanson's and different people like that. They get their
Interesting.
liquid. And so you'll never hear those breweries make fun of Lindemans saying it's fruit juice and stuff like that.
Right.
Because most of the beer that they sell in Belgium is actually very acidic, Gers lambic.
Yeah.
So then we also have the De Proof Brewery.
Okay.
The De Proof Brewery makes a gluten-free beer called Greens. And the Greens Brewery is pretty amazing. Well, the De Proof Brewery is pretty amazing. The Greens beers are amazing because none of the ingredients in them are inherently have gluten in them. They're not deglutenized or stripped or anything like that. They are just ancient grains, as they call them.
Wow.
They weren't there. So, and the De Proof Brewery is just an amazing place, just the same. Dirk Dott's the head brewer there, double PhD. He brews over 300 different labels. Almost all the McKellar brands come out of that brewery.
Wow.
And he's the kind of guy that can just cut through all the fat and say, okay, this is what you're trying to achieve with your flavor. Why don't we do it like this or do this or do this? And he'll help you create a beer, and then you package it and you buy it from him. So none of the beers that he makes actually have the De Proof name on them. They're all the people's that make them. So then we have 3 Trappist monasteries we represent in Belgium, 1 in the Netherlands. That's a new one to us, but the 3 Trappist monasteries in Belgium. So the first time I got to go see them, it was just literally magic.
Oh, I can only imagine.
So the Orval Monastery was formed in 1070 originally. And Countess Matilda went to go pray for her husband who had passed away. And as the story goes, she went to the most holy place that they knew of because there was a naturally spring lake
Okay.
there. And all the folks knew this, that the water that came out of that pond didn't make them sick.
Gotcha.
So they can drink it. And so they assumed God had put the lake there, or the pond there for them. It's a pretty good-sized pond, but it's just a pond for them. And I guess you could say Jesus or God did put the pond there because he built all this. So she was praying for her husband who passed away. And as the story goes, her tears had loosened the wedding band on her finger, and the ring fell in the pond. For all I know, she was happy he was gone, and she threw the ring.
Right,
But
right.
nevertheless, this is how the story goes, and it sounds factual enough. So her ring falls in the pond, and she is hysterical because she can't get it back. And lo and behold, here comes this fish with the ring in its mouth, trying to come back to the surface with the ring in its mouth. And I'm assuming the fish was trying to eat the ring.
Right.
Or maybe he was trying, or she was trying to deliver it back to the surface for her. But Matilda got her ring back. And she said, this is truly the Oravalis, the Golden Valley. And with that, she got done, and in 1070, they started building a church and a dormitory on the side of it. And that's what started Orval in 1070.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a couple of reincarnations. The last reincarnation, it got destroyed during the French Revolution.
Okay.
And then the De Heron family was given all the property. They're the major landowner in the area. They were given all the property. And so the church came back to them in 1926. And in 1928, they rebuilt the monastery. And the De Heron family gave the property back, provided a monastery was going to be built again.
Okay.
And so that's Orval. It's pretty amazing. And then we have the Rochefort Monastery, which was built in the 1200s. That was destroyed by the French Revolution as well, and it was rebuilt. The amazing thing about the Rochefort Monastery is, in my opinion, is Father Pierre. Father Pierre, in 1968, graduated from high school. Like days after he graduated from high school, he went to the monastery trying to join.
Wow.
And so they let him sit outside for like a day, and they finally came back and said, hey, what are you doing, kid?
Yeah.
And he said, I want to be a monk. So they brought him in, cleaned him up, got him some food, cup of coffee or whatever, and said, hey, listen, if you're serious about this, take a couple days. Why don't you come back next week after or whatever. We'll let you spend the night, get a feel for it.
Yeah.
So we did. And they said, okay. He's like, no, I really want to join. They said, all right, you come back in 2 weeks. We'll let you stay for a week. He stayed for a week. They told him, now listen, you're awfully young. Go experience the world. Do not come back for 6 months. If you're here in 6 months, we'll let you stay. And he came back 6 months later.
Wow.
And he's been there basically since 1968. So Father Pierre is in charge of the brewery.
Okay.
He's got his head of quality control used to be the head brewmaster named Goomer Santos. And now his head brewer is Bonneau. Some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. And when you get there, you'll understand how the monasteries, the Trappist monasteries, work for charity.
Right.
Orval is the same way. Father Xavier, just as sharp and nice as can be. Father Pierre at Rochefort, a 10. I mean, just a 10. And then the Westmall Monastery. Now, the Westmall Monastery is the first monastery that was built after the French Revolution.
Okay.
So in 1794, a band of monks was planning on coming to the United States, or southern Canada, if you will. And so the Archbishop said, hey, hold on. Why don't we see if we could do something here before you leave and before you take off? And so they were granted a big chunk of property in 1794, which was nicknamed Nohigarust, like no rest. It was just this, not quality land,
Yeah.
So these poor devils worked themselves to death, trying to turn this into a nice farm. And they did in the end. And so, instead of being a winery or whatever, that part of the world, they make beer. And so the monks they're allowed to have a beer a day. And so they started brewing their own beer. And so they could have a beer a day. It was safe. It was cheaper that way, because they had the farm and they had the ingredients. And the Westmall Monastery sells more Trappist beer in Belgium than any other Trappist monastery.
Really?
Yeah, the Westmall Triple and Double. You can find the double on draft all over. The triple's everywhere. And like all the other Trappist monasteries, whether it's Gethsemane down in Kentucky or the wineries out in California, whatever the case may be, basically all the profits, in a sense, go to charity. And so that's what happens with Westmall. Now, we got the brands of Merchant of Vin probably 12 years ago. Yeah, I could be wrong. Could be 13 years ago, something like that. And we've been working very hard to give them an identity and a future here. And they sell so much beer in Belgium and in surrounding countries in Europe that we originally were only here to kind of protect the beer so it wasn't getting shipped over here illegally, in all honesty.
Gotcha.
But now we're actually a part of their business, and we send people over there annually. And I've worked really hard for them, and they actually were kind enough to reach out to me, and they nominated me for knighthood at the Westmall Monastery. And so Manu, their export manager / marketing manager, he reached out to me and asked me if I would be, if I'd be interested. Basically to let me know that my name was up, for knighthood, or knighthood for, I guess knighthood sounds better than sainthood. So for knighthood. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I didn't hear anything else about it in a long time. And then the president of Merchant of Vin sent in his weekly email. This is his style perfectly. Doesn't say anything. Blah, blah, regular weekly email. And first paragraph, by the way, John Staunton will be knighted in Belgium on this day.
Wow.
And I was like, I read it like everybody else in the company, which is so perfectly Merchant of Vin. It's so perfectly a Trappist thing. Like, get over yourself, buddy. You're not that cool. And I was like, wow. And I handed the computer over to my wife. I said, check that out. And she's like, is that a joke or is that real? I said, that's real. And so I was like, wow, we better start making plans. So my wife and kids wanted to come over for it. Then they made a change in Belgium in the weekend of the beer. Instead of doing it in the city hall, where they've done it for God knows how many years, this huge building that anybody's allowed in, they said, no, for the first time in, I think they said 50 years, we're going to do the knighting back in the Brewers Hall that was built originally in 1697.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's cool. The only knock on it, I only got one ticket.
Yeah.
So I had to say to Nikki and the kids, I'm like, I'm sorry, I only get one ticket. There's no sense paying all this crazy money to fly everybody over there if you can't go in to see it.
Right, absolutely.
Which was disappointing, but it was magical. The entire ceremony, the entire weekend, everything about it was way above billing. It was cooler, nicer, more memorable than I ever thought it would be going over. We got to the weekend of the beer, and the weekend of the beer starts with a parade that leaves the Brewers Hall, and there's these guys in these old outfits carrying kegs of beer, and the church and the bishop and everything leads the way from the Brewers Hall over to this huge cathedral in Brussels. Then you got to understand it's all based on the fact that people could not drink beer or drink water, and they were getting sick. So a fellow named St. Arnold, who's the patron saint of beer, was just a normal parish priest, and he kind of just said, hey, these idiots are getting drunk all the time, and they're alive and kicking. And these nice people who aren't touching a drop of alcohol, all right, are sick as a dog and they're dropping dead. So he said, that's it. No more water. Everybody's drinking beer. And that's what started this whole thing of people just drinking beer. And not understanding, they actually thought it was the ingredients. They didn't understand it was the boiling of the process that killed all the bacteria.
Yeah.
So there you have this history and everything going on, and we're in this church and they're saying a prayer over a keg. And, it's something we would never do here in America, but it just seems so right. The parade goes back to the church, and as soon as the parade goes back, this big, huge beer festival opens up in the Grand Place in the center of Brussels. There's thousands of people there, and they do it really well. You go to these machines, you put money in, you get these little coins, and you give a coin, to the bar. They give you a full beer.
Wow.
In a logoed glass. Not a little cheesy plastic cup with 3 ends and you have to hit a card or anything like that.
Wow.
You get a real Orval chalice or Rochefort chalice or Westmall chalice, whatever the case may be. A nice Lindeman's flute if you're interested in that. And so the next day then, on Saturday, we had to be in front of the Brewers Hall at 10 o'clock. And my good friend George Fisher from Cavalier Distributing was knighted as well with me. And we came in, you had to give your name, you got one ticket. So the president of Merchantman came. I gave him my one ticket that I was given.
Yeah.
And we went up to the room, and all the Grand Masters of the Brewers Association comes up. And they're in these purple outfits with these funky hats, kind of like, Mr. Cunningham from Happy Days kind of stuff, whatever. Was that Fred Flintstone? Was the Grand Poobah or whatever it was. So we go through this process, and they have these three guys in the back playing horns. Whenever you get announced, they play a song, and then they came up, and the Grand Master, Frank Boone, is the current Grand Master. And those are from breweries that were originally opened in the basically late 1600s that started this thing, that are still open today with direct descendants.
Wow.
That are the same families own them. And so went through the process, and they take a brewer's staff and they tip you on both shoulders, and you said, you are now knighted in the brewer's palate.
So am I supposed to be calling you sir?
Well, I think so.
Okay. I apologize because I have not been. So I'll have to just say the word a bunch of times, and I'll re-edit this interview.
It will come more natural to you over time.
I apologize, sir.
Isn't that funny? And and Sister Helen thought I wouldn't ever amount to anything, and there I am, knighted. So it was just a remarkable weekend. It was spectacular. Everything about it was way bigger, cooler, nicer, neater, than I ever dreamed it would be. It was really a lot of fun.
So you got put up for this nomination because you know all about this beer just through selling it. How did that initial nomination come out?
Well, I think for all the things I've been doing for the monasteries.
Okay.
I think that's where it really came from, especially Westmall, because then Westmall nominated me. And so what happens, you get nominated, but then another brewer who is part of the Brewers Association, if you will, from the Brewers Palate, has to second it.
Okay.
And then if you get third, a third brewery says, yeah, that's our kind of guy, or that's our kind of girl, whatever the case may be. Then you start working your way up the list of who gets knighted.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when Westmall nominated me, then Orval, Rochefort, Lindemans, DeProof, all the rest of our breweries said, yeah, that's John is our kind of guy.
Nice. It's nice to have that backing.
Oh yeah, it was great. The Dubach brewery especially. Those guys, Henry and the rest of them, came to the knighting. So which was
awesome.
really nice that they were coming. I didn't expect Father Pierre to come strolling in.
No, absolutely.
He's got more important things to do than see me get a gold medal around my neck. But it was. After 25 years of being in the business, it's something I can hang my hat on, definitely.
Absolutely. That not many people get to have that kind of honor. And when I read about it, and then Luke happened to mention that he knew you, and I was like, wow, it would be really cool to get to the opportunity to learn from you and kind of hear that sort of experience. And that's sort of how this whole thing happened. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and talk a little bit about this, and how can people help support Merchant to Vin and help support you? That's
a great question. That's probably the best question I've asked on an interview ever. The best way to support us is when you see our brands on the shelves. You'll see the Merchant of Vin logo, but you can go to our website, find our brand, Samuel Smith from England, or like I said, Eyinger, the Trappist beers from Belgium. Please buy them. You see them on the shelf, buy them. If you're buying a 12-pack of Fatheads or Great Lakes Brewing Company or something, even a domestic, why don't you try to give some of the beers that invented beer itself, and because of those breweries that I represent today, or what we have today in the beer world, why don't you give them a try and see where the beers actually taste-wise came from? Because they don't change their recipes for anybody.
Right.
That's just not how they do it. And just like here in American Breweries are all friends, we're friends with their other competitors and stuff like that in Europe. And yeah, so the best thing you can do is to support the brands, is to buy the beer. And if you just buy even a little bit, if everybody bought a little bit, it'll make a huge difference, especially for the monasteries, as far as their charitable donations that they make. Like we have Orval Day in the spring. It's usually the third Saturday in March. And we donate as a company $6 from every case of beer of Orval we sell that day. So we had almost 800 accounts across the country celebrate Orval Day with us. That money goes directly to charity.
That's amazing.
And we are in water is our charity. We're trying to get fresh, drinkable water around the world where it can't be. And being here from Cleveland, we're looking out the Cuyahoga River right now. And remember, I was really young when it was catching on fire. To see how many people are using the river now today with paddle boards and this and that, and how much fun it is. We have the luxury of having all this fresh water here, and people around the world don't. And so this is the things you can do to help us, and that's one big one that you could do to help.
Absolutely. I recently started getting into beer sales myself at the ground level, at the selling at like a grocery store, and that has sort of sparked my exploration of different styles. And I found Orval and Westmall and all these places. I've found them, and I'm like, what is this? And I've learned they're some of my favorite beers.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I've tried some of these. I have. I'm trying to remember. I think it's Orval. I believe I have a chalice of at home.
Okay.
I got it was a Christmas present. Because
somebody loves you, Bill.
I really love that style. There's a lot of flavor to it. And then there's a book I just got that I've been making my way through. I wanted to see if you knew about it. It's called Trappist Travels.
No.
And this group of women got together. They're like beer writers and brewers and stuff like that. They got together and they went on a Trappist tour of Europe and I think they hit all of them.
Well, I'm gonna have to get that book and read it.
I'll send you the link, and it's a really cool read, and it gives you a little bit of nice background on all the different places.
The best book I've read about Trappist monasteries and breweries and stuff is a fellow named Jeff Vandenstein.
Okay.
And Jeff is a brewer himself, and he wrote a book, The 7 Magnificent Breweries. And there's 13 Trappist monasteries now, but at the time there were 7.
Yeah.
When he wrote the book. And he got to actually live at the 7 different monasteries.
Wow.
With them for about a month each. And while he did that, he actually got to know the monks and got the history and got the flavor of and that is the best, I think, book.
I will have to check that one out.
Yeah, The 7 Magnificent Breweries, Jeff Vandenstein.
That will get added to my Christmas list this year. Thank you
man.
very much.
I'm here for you.
Well, John, let you get going. I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and talk with me a little bit about Belgian beer and your experience with it. And anything else you want to get out before we head out?
No, just everybody buy some really good expensive beer around the holidays.
Absolutely.
All right.
John, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers.